Yeah, hello everybody, and welcome to my presentation on data-intensive decision-making in the era of data and AI. Well, I put under the section where this presentation has been placed the question mark of revolutionizing digital governance. We can discuss whether it's possible or not. Yeah, what I would like to discuss with you in my presentation is, and I'm glad that we had earlier presentations of Ronnie, Marine, Yanis, and also Live's presentation, where I think this presentation can add one other dimension of consideration, and I hope you will agree and appreciate the thoughts that I would like to share with you. I'd like to, because the title of the presentation is Data Intensive Decision Making, I'd like to elaborate a bit the decision making aspect and see where AI and big data can be leveraged in these types of decision making. And based on our GovTrio road mapping works that Yanis has mentioned also earlier, I'd like to draw a few future research and training needs. However, I also want to stress that based on today's discussion, and I really loved the discussion of today in the presentations, I think there is need for further updating this kind of research needs and training needs, complementing them with some views that have been brought in by the presentations today. Well, yeah, let's scope this kind of decision-making in public spheres. I would like to look into public policy making, law making, public service, and the evaluation and impact assessment to achieve improved government and governance. So seeing this also as an iterative cycle of well, deciding on strategic level, putting in force the laws, the bills to regulate, and then both of them, public policy or the bill, the law, then to be implemented, so to say, in the public service, both with really the service to the citizen or the businesses on one side, but also looking into, and it's data-driven decision-making. A lot of the work that is carried out in the public service is data and information by nature. It's dealing with a lot of information, collecting a lot of information, and then analyzing that kind of information in order then to understand whether some intervention has to be done to the market, to society, to environment, etc. And in order to make both public policy making and law making, as well as public service provisioning happening, the evaluation and impact assessment plays another important role. And that's an iterative cycle that we have to look at frequently. Now, certainly you're aware of decision making in the public policy life cycle. It's the third step here. There are different such life cycles when it comes into discussing in political spheres, strategic spheres, what public policies have to be put in place, like the AI strategy, digital agenda. There are a lot of such kind of strategies, both globally from international organizations, but particularly from nation governments or the European Union. And along this policy life cycle, data, in order to do decision making, becomes the key asset. We know there's a lot of literature on data as an asset nowadays, and data-driven has become one of the key considerations in our research as well, but also in practice. And this data asset is also reflected in a number of strategic policies that have been issued in the past few years. I'm not going into the detail on this, but what I want to stress here is now, well, along this policy life cycle, and be this the one of Howard and Ramesh or of others, McIntosh, OECD, etc., there are a number of, which are all kind of similar. So along these different phases in the policy life cycle, if we want to apply artificial intelligence, big data, and other kind of disruptive technologies, we can do so. And certainly there are a number of examples. And just to give you here some ideas, in the agenda setting, for example, the analysis of social media, Twitter discussions, opinion mining, sentiment analysis from social media, all this can help to understand, so well, what do people think of a certain topic of interest, of a certain discussion, and what kind of tensions can we extract from that. So we can use AI and big data analytics to understand these opinions, the sentiments of people, in order then to see whether on the political agenda we need to put a topic into the discussion and put it into the policy life cycle. Developing a policy, that means then policy formulation, making a decision on the final policy to be approved, and then of course implementing it. I do have some noise here. Shadow, can you please mute your mic? Thank you. So the second phase here, policy formulation, data is a big asset, and data can help us understand different options of policy. The data is being used for policy analysis. Models are constructed to explain different options of a policy domain, whether a certain decision in the policy could be more beneficial or less beneficial, etc. So the policy analysis and modeling can help in supporting the policy formulation, and finally also the decision making through simulations, gamification, when it comes also, for example, to citizen participation. Then we are in the e-participation domain that Yannis was also mentioning before. Sheo, could you please mute your mic again? Thank you. I'm sorry, Sheo, could you please mute your mic? Harris or
I'm not even I don't have the results, the rights here to mute.
Yeah.
Sehu.
Okay.
Yeah, here it is. Okay.
Okay, it's gone. Thank you. So, and the third one is the third phase here is decision making, where we have seen some examples mentioned before. Also, the AI-based support can generate more informed decisions also in the policy making, assessing and simulating different policy options, as I mentioned before, and their consequences can help also making better decisions on a certain policy. And so we see a lot of areas where AI and big data can be beneficial. Now, second point, well, we have this iterative cycle, the more strategic level as the policy making. Of course, when it comes to setting clear rules, lawmaking comes into play, and there are different, but I'm talking about democratic constitutions, and I've taken the process of the European Parliament on the decision making in the lawmaking procedure. So I'm not going to detail too much here on the process. I just want to visualize to you there are different steps: the first reading, the second reading, and the third reading. And here in the European context, we have two chambers, the Parliament and the Council, that have to discuss and adopt, or also then say, no, we don't want to approve a certain bill or legislation. And there, as I you can see here, there are different exit points, either positively, so like some simpler laws can be approved in the first reading of the council after the parliament has given okay, and then the process stops because it's adopted. Or after the second reading in the parliament, and if the council has well, voted negatively, then the parliament agrees and says also no, then the process stops as well, etc. It's not so much about the process here in detail, but what is important here is then to understand, so where is the decision making, where can AI and big data, where can the technologies that we are discussing here support along these procedures. And the most potential of using AI and big data is actually at the beginning. I didn't mention before in the process, actually in the European Union's context, lawmaking procedures, the European Commission or different actors at the European level are entitled to submit a draft bill that then goes through the Parliament and the Council for its approval or non-adoption. So the Commission, before starting this process with the Parliament and the Council, consults a lot of experts, has its own expertise in its Commission structures, collects the opinion of the member states, a lot of data and opinions, expertise, findings from different studies, monitoring activities, etc., is being collected in order to inform a certain decision-making process. And AI and machine learning, big data analytics, but also simulation and gamification, as we saw in the policy making, can support to demonstrate the actions and consequences of a certain draft bill and provide the information to the Commission to set up the draft bill that should then be deliberated in the Parliament and the Council. And this kind of technological advancements can also be used, for example, then to explain to the citizens of the European Union what a certain draft bill should generate as an impact later on, what the consequences are, or also demonstrate what the options of different passages of a certain draft bill are. And along the procedure, gamification, along the participation and also in the conciliation, again, these technologies may help to visualize, to demonstrate, to explain what the purpose, what the consequences of the draft bill or the bill to be adopted are, in order then for the members of the Parliament and Council to make informed decisions. So AI and big data analytics can help for better informed lawmaking. It can help ex ante legal impact assessment, because simulation models can help explore what if situations, and also gamification, as I mentioned, in the consultation and deliberation for the citizens. Now, we have the policy, we have the law decided. Now it's on the implementation of the policy or the adopted law. So we are in the sphere of public service provisioning and observation monitoring, where the public administration, different actors in this context of more operational service provisioning interacts with the citizens, with the companies, and provide public service of different kinds. So also here the question is then, what are the areas where AI and big data analytics can support policy implementation and the implementation of legislation? On the left side, you see more towards the public service provisioning, examples of expert systems supporting public servants in the decision along public service. So still the public servant masters the procedure, While the third example here mentioned AI and robotics providing fully automatic public service execution, so there is no further human intervention along a procedure. And another example is robot process automation, where also the conceptualization, the procedural aspects are automatically analyzed and constructed and optimized through the mechanisms of AI and robot process understanding. On the right side, we see more the observation and monitoring aspects, which are still activities that maybe are not so visible to the citizens and companies or NGOs, so the constituencies of a public service, but which are important activities also of public service, like monitoring, collecting data of environment, of healthcare, of climate, environment, economic growth, finance and austerity, education, and big data analytics and also some AI can be used in order to analyze and investigate, generate understanding of the current situation of a state, of an environment, of healthcare, in order then, for example, to and then we're again with the life cycle and the iterations to adopt, to change, to revise a certain policy or legislation. Another area of intervention here is AI and big data to support real-time societal and market interventions. The financial crisis is one of the examples where this kind of techniques have been used and are also currently used now with the discussions of, well, how much financial support should be given to small medium enterprises that, for example, have got huge losses along the COVID crisis. And these technologies can support decision making by, again, simulating, visualizing to the decision makers where particular interventions are needed. And another area is civil protection, crime prevention, surveillance, cybercrime, where AI and big data can help, for example, identifying pedophilia, cybercrime, and other criminal activities in order to prevent and help police and criminologists to fight crime. And I also should stress that these examples are not a full exhaustive list, but I'm trying to structure a bit where AI and big data can be applied in different spheres of public sector decision making. Well, and then we come to the evaluation and revisions phase. We have seen the steps from the policy making, lawmaking to public service provisioning. Now, of course, public sector also needs and does reflect the impact and the success of the measures put through policies, through legislation, and along the public service provision. So in the evaluation and revisions phase, again, a lot of data comes in and tries to, with AI, machine learning, big data analytics, simulations, gamification, dashboards, to mention a few of these concepts, to assess the impact of legislation, of public policy, of public service as such, but also to understand from the current data and situation what intervention needs emerge from, for example, a certain evolution in society or the market. That means the evaluation part is also a support for ad hoc decision making, as we have seen from the pandemic outbreak of COVID mentioned. And in the ordinary iteration, evaluation usually provides necessary information and insights then to understand whether policy needs to be changed, whether legislation needs to be adopted or new legislation needs to be put in place, and whether in public service provisioning things need to be adopted. We have been discussing a lot about digital transformation, so the digitalization and digital transformation aspects need to be understood carefully, and they derive also from the understanding of how the public service works at stake at the moment, and what we expect from the improvement. So again, a lot of support can be expected actually from AI and big data, dashboard simulations, in order to make better informed decisions, in order to do ex post policy impact assessment and ex post legal impact assessment, in order to understand societal and market evolution for adapting, for establishing discourse, putting on the agenda on a policy discussion, a new topic that needs to be deliberated and decided. And on the side of the evaluation, I visualize here again the data, it's data that needs to be analyzed. Of course, the procedures play an important role as well, but in the end, it's evidence data, it's opinion, it's expert data that all need to be integrated from different sources, structured and unstructured. And these new technologies can help a lot to simplify procedures. Even though I need to stress also from the discussion that Ronnie had in the morning, there are of course also a lot of risks, and we need to understand that. I've not shown you concrete examples of use of AI and big data in evidence-based decision making, because I really love the report that Gianluca was mentioning yesterday. And for example, on page 18, you see a table of examples that they are listing in the report. They have done a slightly different typology of AI technologies. I've been approaching my research here more on the decision-making steps, and actually both views need to be brought together. And that brings me to the point of our Gov3O project that has been mentioned several times already yesterday and today. And we have been doing a roadmap for research and training needs in government 3.0, and I think Yanis will afterwards give more detailed presentation also on the three stages of government, Gov1, Gov3. I'm not doing that. But what I want to briefly demonstrate to you is we have been studying the different we call them disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, smart cities, etc. I'm not mentioning all of them. So we have done literature analysis, we have done project analysis, and from this we generated a set of scenarios in order to explore what are the research gaps and needs, and what are the training gaps and needs, in order then to come up with a roadmap. Roadmap of research actions. Just to give you a flavor, we have been deliberating the scenarios that we've generated from the literature analysis and the project analysis with a set of stakeholders in different workshops. These scenarios usually combine several so-called disruptive technologies and disruptive concepts. So we distinguish between disruptive technologies like AI, machine learning, Internet of Things, blockchain technologies, and disruptive concepts in terms of smart city, co-creation in public service provisioning, or gamification, policy analysis and modeling, which leverage the technologies and dramatically also change the way public service provisioning is done, like smart city is such a disruptive concept. Just to give you some flavors here of the workshop activity. So we had posters, as you saw before, and then with the post-it, people, first of all, could discuss and improve the scenarios, and second, then add research needs and training needs. We discussed them in several workshops in order then to come up, and we just published a paper in the TEDM where we then put forward the research needs and the training needs on disruptive technologies in government 3.0. We have been describing standardization interoperability of disruptive technologies, and this table here shows also which technologies or concepts particularly demand further research in this area. Sorry, one moment. Yeah, the analysis of stakeholders, and we see that's the part for all the disruptive technologies and concepts. We need to understand what are people's needs, what are people's concerns, the risks that Ronnie was mentioning in his presentation, but also inform the stakeholders about the potentials of this kind of technologies and concepts. Evaluation and policy making, how these disruptive technologies can be used. Of course, data security and data privacy, that refers again to Ronnie's presentation about the risks, together with the ethical issues and the automated decision making, where these technologies can be used, how they can be used, and what benefits can be generated. Likewise, we have developed the training needs. And also here we did a similar exercise to spot what particular needs emerge and that should be introduced in curriculum development. I think Gabriela Viale Pereira will give some presentation on this tomorrow. Yeah, and to conclude with my presentation, some challenges and outlook. To sum up, first of all, what we see is AI and big data bear big potentials for revolutionizing the way of public sector service towards more evidence-based, data-driven decision-making, overall in the different stages that we have discussed. However, and this is also shown in the different presentations today and yesterday, how these potentials can be leveraged effectively and legally and socially compliance, that still needs substantial and interdisciplinary research efforts. On the one hand, for the understanding of what are the most influential phenomena of risks and success. On the other hand, for designing and implementation of solutions that meet the needs and the expectations of the people, of society, of the market actors, and thirdly, for understanding how these solutions that have been then put in place or are already being put in place, how these work in practice and create successful impact, the demanded impact that was formulated initially. The AI Watch of the Joint Research Center that Gianluca was presenting yesterday, it's really a good starting point. Also, there is a number of case studies in research emerging and that provide good insights. However, the use of this kind of disruptive technologies is a multifaceted challenge, and the exercise that Yannis challenged us today, I think, nicely demonstrate this complex, multifaceted area of digital transformation and digital governance science space, how new technologies can be leveraged for the good, and we need to understand what the risks are, as again Ronnie was presenting in the morning. We need to understand the motivation to change, so the motivation of people to change. People, I mean individual citizens. I mean, people working in the government sector, public servants, the political level, but also the business level. We need to understand what are the fears of being exposed to manipulation and misuse. I'm referring here to both algorithms of AI, where we do not necessarily understand what exactly happens, or where people are segregated according to certain criteria, which are racistic, etc., or the misuse of data being manipulated as well, or by connecting data about people that are against actually the data protection regulations. And of course, also the acceptance of people to be tackled, need to be tackled particularly. And these are aspects in the social area that we need to understand, and particular trade-offs between exploiting machine intelligence and at the same time meeting the social needs of people, I think is a big challenge that we have to address carefully. That means that we need a good balance between technological advancements and the pace of socially compatible digital transformation. And we discussed already along Live's presentation that for this we need interdisciplinary research. And yeah, we discussed before, we are already an interdisciplinary community. I think there's still a lot of research needed and collaboration needed in order to make interdisciplinary research even more successful than we are currently are, in order to address the societal challenges we have. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you in the presentation. I have one last question for you. If you go to this link here, I have three questions. The first one is, with the use of AI and big data in policy making, lawmaking, public service provisioning, are we going to substantially change the ways decision making is being conducted in the next 1 to 2 decades, so 10, 20 years? And I here refer really to public sector's decision making, the types of decision making that we have been addressing before. So some people say everything will change. That's something like 30%, and some a bit more than 60 tend to some parts will change. There's probably 1 or 2 people that think nothing will change. Interesting. So the next question is, if you, and most of you tend towards change, please describe what you think will change through the use of AI and big data in the decision making. We have more transparency, organizational model, no more hierarchy, just to mention a few. I need to analyze that. Thank you very much for all these inputs. Last question. There were a few that tended more towards not much will change. And I'd like to understand, please add now your thoughts why you think that procedures in decision making will not change or will not dramatically change through the use of AI and big data. The answers why procedures will not change. Yeah, good point. Has it changed in the last 20 years? I'm also tending towards this understanding. With all the 20 years of e-government, the decision-making procedures have not really changed so much. Yeah, the technology is seen as an enabler. Some idealists may think, okay, with AI, much more will be now based on intelligence, but I don't think that this will really dramatically change. Also, tradition is an aspect, data not being harmonized, interoperability systems. I think that this is not a problem of not changing the procedures, because with these technologies, we don't need always structured data. Also, particularly with machine learning, with text mining, we can also analyze unstructured data. And even with image recognition, patterns from images can be, and also from audio files can be analyzed and evaluated in the future more automatically. Okay, thank you so much for these contributions. I look forward to analyze all this. And yeah, if you have any further questions, we can discuss them now.